everybody, welcome back to Spill the Tea Lou. Please let me know, can you see me, can you hear me, is everything working as it should? You know what it's like when I start new technologies, when I'm learning new things, I never know if they're working, so I need you guys in the house to let me know if the things are thinging and if everything is working as it should do. I am attempting to check it on my end while I am speaking to you guys. But let me know in the chat, because what I don't want to do is be halfway into a segment blabbering away and yous are like, what is she talking about? So I should be working. I appear to be working on my end, so let me know as you come in, folks, if you can see and hear me. What I'm going to do while you file in an orderly fashion, because you're all very well behaved, is get you guys a poll in the chat. I am on time, but I've been negligent because I was so focused on getting myself live on time, I didn't do the poll. Silly Lou. So we're going to get the poll in the chat, and then, oh, Mama Flossie is saying it's very quiet. Now, Flossie, because what happened was the wee wire for my microphone came out, but as you can see, the light is back on, which means it should now be working. It's turned up as high as it goes. There is no higher volume, so just let me know, is that better for you while I type out this poll? So, is this... Please excuse me while I type, because I cannot talk and type at the same time because I'm an idiot, and I will type the things that I'm saying out loud. So you will, this is the kind of thing when I'm late, this is the kind of thing that's happening. So it's all obviously very exciting. But if you just let me know if that sound is working while I type, and that should be okay. That's unusual, Flossie, because I literally have it literally, the mic doesn't go any higher, so I don't know why it would be like that. Can you hear me now with your sound turned up? Is it okay for you like that? Least add option, most least, neither. Okay, the poll is started, so that much is working. I can hear you all okay. Perfect. Okie dokie. Right, so we will get stuck into it before I push a button and something else decides not to work. Now, before I get stuck into the thing, so obviously you can tell from the thumbnail, I'm going to talk about the Premier League. I'm going to talk about, is this the most or least competitive Premier League season we've had? Is the Premier League getting better or worse? Is it getting more competitive or less competitive? It's a conversation that's been sort of bubbling away under the surface for a little while. It's something that has been it was thrown out last season against Liverpool. It's sort of been thrown out this season against Arsenal. But the thing is, it's not really against those teams. It's against the league. Is the league too easy to win? Is it that there's not enough competition? We're going to get to all that. But first of all, we had a little bit of news. Some Manchester United fans are going to be absolutely over the moon about this. I'm a little bit sad. I think it's the right thing, but I'm a little bit sad. Is we had the news that Casemiro is going to be leaving at the end of the season. Hopefully you should be able to see that now on my screen. It is from Ben Jacobs. I don't think it was Ben Jacobs that broke it though. I think a few people have put it out there earlier on when I was at work, but this is the one I could find when I was looking for the show. So, Manchester United agreed to Casemiro's request to confirm his summer departure now. The Brazilian wanted to clarify his future and end speculation as to whether he would leave or extend, which is fair enough. After talks, it's understood Manchester United chose not to offer Casemiro a reduced terms extension, and there were never any club plans to trigger his existing one-year option. Casemiro's departure forms part of Manchester United's plans for a midfield revamp. Wage saving frees up budget space. So there's a lot to get through in there. There is, though, also some quotes from Casemiro. It's important basically to know when stages come to an end, knowing when to say goodbye, when you feel that you will be remembered and respected forever. 4 months to give my all for this badge and for our goal. Eternal respect and affection for Manchester United and its wonderful fans. Forever a Red Devil. So some very nice quotes there from Casemiro. I have no doubt whatsoever that he will continue to give his all for the entire rest of the season. What I find interesting though, we kind of knew he was never going to be extended on his current contract. The wages he's on are far too high. We kind of knew he was on his way out. We kind of knew that the new hierarchy don't want to be paying those kind of wages or fees anymore. So it's not surprising that he is that he's not been extended on his current terms to trigger the existing 1 year extension. I was curious to see United chose not to offer Casemiro a reduced terms extension. So it's not that they've offered and he's turned it down. They haven't even made him an offer, which I would have expected. Certainly under the previous board, it's the kind of thing we would have done. There were some fans that wouldn't have been completely devastated with it. I don't know how I feel about the whole thing. It's probably the right decision. I like him. I like his mentality. I think he's just such an exceptional player. But you know what? At his age, and when we are in the middle of a rebuild, this is probably when we talk about being ruthless. And I see Jay's in the house. Thank you for joining us, Jay. Bear with me just a quick moment. There we are. Sorry, just wanted to sort that. But yeah, so I was interested to see that they didn't offer him a reduced terms extension, because I thought they might have done that just for his experience, just for the things he's achieved, just for what the impact he can have on the dressing room. But you know what? Maybe this is the sign of a new era, the dawn of a new day. We're not going to do the things we would have done previously, so I can't complain. I can't complain. We're doing things differently. That can only be a positive. I will be sad to see him go. I think he's a great personality. He's an exceptional player. I'm delighted that we got to see him. But look, it probably is time. I do also see there at the end, Ben is obviously running out of characters, and he's saying wage saving frees up budget space, because Casemiro's wages are absolutely enormous. So I have no doubt that frees up budget space. However, will that budget space be used? Unlikely, because we are a pack of cheapskates at Manchester United. They'll probably use that for some dividends or something nonsense. It certainly won't be for players. Unlikely. My hopes are not up. And I don't know if anyone remembers, back in December, people were asking me, what did I think of the upcoming transfer window? What did I think of January transfers? Who was I looking at? And I kind of said, I'm not really bothered talking about it. No disrespect to anyone that wants to talk about it, but I don't think we're going to do anything, so I'm not getting myself excited. And yeah, well, we haven't got anyone so far. We might get a mystery loanee if we're super lucky by the end of the window, but even that I think seems unlikely. We spent most of the window faffing about managers, so I feel much the same coming to the to the summer transfer window. I know there's loads and loads of talk. We're going to have a big window. We're going to have all this budget. We're revamping this. We're buying that. It's going to be huge for Manchester United. Do you know what it is? I believe it when I see it, lads. I'm just not getting ahead of myself. But what I really wanted to talk to you guys about, and I see Guess has joined us. She was getting some tea. Vic is saying, welcome Vic, you're new to the chat, thank you for joining us, friend. Looking at the table for Champions League, I'd say the Prem is by far the best league in the world. People claiming the Prem is down and the Champions League are only because Arsenal are first, and he insulted the people that have that opinion. Vic, when you come on the channel, you are more than welcome to have your opinion. I think it's a very interesting point. It's something we're going to discuss. But if you could refrain from calling people clowns, that would be wonderful. We're pretty chilled out on this channel. Nice chat, nice crack, bit of banter, insults are out. So you're more than welcome to stay and join the chat, but keep the insults out. Welcome, Aaron. Thank you for joining me, friend. Everybody's filing in. Please do smash a like on the video as you're joining. Please do also get a vote in on the poll as you're joining. I see, God, everybody is filing in. I see Paige, I see Trav, I see everybody. Everybody's joining. And these are just in time, lads, because I was only talking about Casemiro for the first wee bit. Now we are going to talk about the Premier League. As I said at the start of the video, it's something that's been happening not... I don't even think it started this season. To me, I was hearing people talk about this last season. It might have happened even before that, but I felt like it picked up momentum last season. There was a lot of people saying, you know, Liverpool weren't worthy winners. It wasn't a very competitive league. There was nobody really chasing them. They've won it, but they've kind of won it because everyone else was terrible. That narrative seems to be sort of resurfacing. It's sort of bubbling away there again this season. I've heard more and more people starting to talk about it. The bigger the gap is at the top, the more and more people are starting to put that opinion out there. And so I thought to myself, it's been kind of mentioned on channels, it's been sort of talked about in group chats, but I wanted to have a little look at it myself because, to be honest, I'm undecided. So I'm going to talk my way through it with you guys, and maybe by the end we'll come to a conclusion, maybe we won't, but at least we'll have a bit of a chat. We chat. Jay is saying about Casemiro, if he's gone in the summer, they better do a great summer window, but can't see that happening. Agree on all points. So a lot of the argument around the Premier League isn't as competitive, it's not as good, it's getting worse, etc., etc. All the sort of rhetoric seems to be framed around two things. The team at the top, whether it be Liverpool or Arsenal or anyone else, is pulling away. There's a big gap, which means the people behind them must be terrible. And the next thing is, there's so many draws. There's all these draws. And if everybody's drawn, it's because it's boring and it's terrible. It's not entertaining. And I hear the word boring thrown around a lot. So what I wanted to do first of all is have a little look, and lads, just know I'm not one for the stats, but we're going to have some stats today because we need to be factual so we don't upset anybody's feelings. But I want you to have a little look at the number of draws we're having in the Premier League, and is there more draws? Is it more boring? And at the end, all the things we're going to talk about at the end, we're going to say, well, okay, does that make it more or less competitive, or are we all just being a bit dramatic? So listen to Aaron. Hit the like button, please, everybody, and we will jump into it. Now, this is going to be a wee bit small. I'm going to try and zoom it, but if I zoom it any more, you're going to lose. We don't really need that line. What we need is this. So this is on footystats.org, okay? So this is the number of draws in the Premier League so far this season, okay? So as you can see, matches played 22 for everybody. Bournemouth are the team at the top there with 9 draws, okay? Sunderland, who are flying in the Premier League, who are doing very, very well, and who are definitely bucking the trend of 3 up, 3 down, have had 9 draws. So it's obviously not doing them any harm so far. Other teams near the top there are Brighton, United, Palace, who had a good start to the season, dropped off, Chelsea, who were probably lucky to get some draws with the amount of red cards that we're getting, Leeds, and all the way down, 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 okay? So we can see the whole list here. And this, when I added them up, where did I put it? Have I got it here at the bottom? Yes. So of the 220 matches played so far, which is an enormous amount of matches, we've played 220 matches so far in the season. 59 of them have been a draw. Okay, that means so far this season, 27% of the matches in the Premier League have ended in a draw. So I would question at this point, and I'm not going to answer the question, I'm going to just throw them out to you guys. You guys get your opinions in, and then at the end when I'm rounding up, I'll tell you what I think of all the things I've been saying. And so let me see. Huge is in the house. Hello, Huge. It is nice to see you. So Vic is saying the Prem has 6 teams in the top 11, with Man City being the lowest. I'd say the Prem is super competitive. Now, Vic, you are new to the channel, so I'm going to give you a spoiler, something that the other guys already know a little bit. I have argued consistently so far this season that I think the Premier League is very competitive, so we are not worlds apart on that. Vic followed up by saying draws are because teams are parking the bus. Even City and Liverpool park the bus when playing Arsenal. Plenty of games Arsenal doesn't even concede a shot on goal. Think about that. Well, the reason I'm not going to think about that, Vic, is because Arsenal aren't even anywhere near the top. So this is why I pulled this graphic up. These are the teams with the most draws. Okay, so Arsenal's down here in 11th. Arsenal isn't even in the top 10 teams with the most draws this season. So the video isn't about Arsenal. And it's not about slagging Arsenal off. It's not about slagging Liverpool off. It's not about slagging any team off. It's about discussing the Premier League as a whole, all 20 teams in the Premier League, because I don't think any one single team can make a league of 20 teams boring. So even if people are parking the bus against Arsenal and people are saying Arsenal are boring, that is a separate conversation for me, because that's not to do with the whole league. And as I said, Arsenal aren't even in the top 10 teams, 4 draws this season. So while it might be something that is being thrown at Arsenal, it's not about Arsenal, because there isn't one team in the league, there's 20 teams. So when you talk about a whole league being boring, you're not saying Arsenal are boring. You're talking about the entire Premier League and all 20 teams that are within that. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We're not going to be sort of singling out one team, because I think that's sometimes where the conversation dies. So when a team is singled out, like last season Liverpool, this season Arsenal, I think what happens is it stops the conversation. And Vic, absolutely no need to apologise. I think it's a really good, important thing to bring to the show, because I think sometimes that kind of attitude from people, not from you, but from people who are having this conversation, I think it can stop the conversation. Because if you feel that your team is being like singled out and honed in on and hammered, what happens then is you don't really want to have the conversation, because your instinct is to protect your team. I mean, if people are talking about Manchester United and being like, oh, they're boring, they're this or that, I might think it, but if you say it, I'm going to fight you. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's important when we have the conversation, we don't frame it as, well, the league is boring because Arsenal's running away with it, or the league was boring last year because Liverpool's running away with it. I think it's important that we talk about the whole league, because it's a bit sort of arrogant, I think, of us to say, well, only our teams count. If my team's playing exciting football, then the league's exciting. Or if my team is in boring matches, then the league is boring. Because we can't really water it down to just that. And I think sometimes that happens. On YouTube, I see often we talk about the big six, the traditional big six. And what happens is we forget all the other teams. And I think it's important that we remember there is 20 teams and they're all equally important. They might not all be equally successful, but they're certainly equally important. RJ, where are you off to? Jay's got to shoot. She's come to say hi to everybody. He's a wedding party. Ooh, well, you go and enjoy yourself, Jay. You have a wee drink for us. And when you've caught up after the wedding, when you're having your hangover, make sure you get a comment in afterwards and let us know what you thought. Vic is saying, I just think a lot of teams, even the top teams, are playing safer. A lot of games the manager wants the points at a minimum, but also doesn't want the other team to gain 3 points. And I think that's a very good point by Vic. And I actually think it points to the earlier point you made about it being more competitive, because the bigger teams are now more worried about the smaller teams. And because they're more worried about the smaller teams, they're actually defending more than they would have done traditionally. So before, like the big six or like the top four or the big teams would have gone out and they would have trampled what we consider to be the smaller teams, and therefore they're scoring more goals, there's bigger goal difference, there's a more points disparity, and therefore they're winning the league at a canter. There's record number of points to win the league, and it looks competitive, but is it really when there's such a disparity between the teams? So I think it's a really good point, Vic. 100% agree with that. But so this is the draws so far this season. And what I wanted to do was have a look at that in comparison to draws from previous seasons. So at the minute, we have 59 draws, 27% of the matches have ended in a draw so far this season. But I want you to know, okay, well, if that's super duper boring because there's all these draws, then how does it compare to previous seasons? Is it going up? Are we getting more draws, or are we just being dramatic? Because I think a lot of us on the internet, we have a tendency to be a little bit dramatic. I can't make this bigger, and I don't know why it won't let me make it bigger. So basically this graph, it starts in 1992 to 1993, all the way up to last season 24-25, and it shows the percentage of draws out of the games. So far this season for 25-26, obviously there's some games to go, we're at 27%. Last season, 30% of games were a draw, which seems like a lot. It's obviously higher than this season, but it seems like a lot That's a lot of draws. So I don't think, you have to put it in context. So far this season it's 27, but last season it was 30. So it's not crazy. I think maybe where the trouble comes is the season before. So the 23-24 season was only 21.6%. So I think that when you go from 21.6% of the matches were draws to last season it went shot up to 30%, and now this season it's 27% so far, it feels like it's drastically increased. But you can see there, so for a few seasons it's actually stayed more or less low, but then it really dropped. So this is 2018, 2019. It was only 18.7%. So say 19%. Around 1 in 5, 1 in 6 games were a draw. Okay, so that's really, really, really low. But if you go further back kind of to the early noughties, the early 2010s, we've got in 15, 16, it was 28%. Then if I go to 12, 13, it was 28%. If you go to 10, 11, it was 29%. So while we do have these drops, it actually seems that the really low number of draws are the anomaly, because primarily the graph is up here. So actually, this season so far in terms of draws isn't outstanding as a terribly bad season with loads and loads of draws. It's actually quite on par with a lot of the previous seasons we've had, where I never in the 2010s heard it being discussed that there's so many draws in the league, it's so boring. I never heard that before last season. And maybe there were people out there saying it, but it certainly wasn't a main topic of conversation. And so I think that's why sometimes it's important to go back and look at, okay, well, we know what it is so far this season. 27% seems like a pretty high number because you're just under a third. But I mean, when you look at it, it's actually not that odd at all. Like outside of the 2018-29 season, it has been over 20% of the league has been draws every single year. All of them. And for the vast majority, you're looking at about 25% upwards. So actually, it's more in line than it feels. But the next thing was, well, draws are okay if the games have goals. Because if the game is 2-2, 3-3, 4-4... that's a lot of goals. But I mean, if it's score draws, if it's back and forth, if this team's scoring, that team's scoring, or if this team's ahead and then that team makes a comeback, it's exciting, there's goals, it's happening, do you know what I mean? So you're going, okay, well maybe the problem isn't the number of draws, maybe the problem is the number of 0-0 draws, because let's face it, there's no getting around this and there's definitely no fighting with it. A 0-0 draw is not what we want to see. When you're going into a football match and you're getting hyped up, when you're watching a preview, when you're looking at the build-up, nobody goes into a football match going, I hope this is 0-0. Nobody. 0-0s feel boring. Sometimes the performances are good, sometimes the tactics can be interesting, but overall, 0-0 feels boring. Now, if you disagree with me, let me know in the chat. But I mean, you'd be hard pushed to sell a 0-0 to most people. Jared, it's lovely to see you. Thanks for joining the chat. Lovely, lovely. Let me see. What are we saying? Vic and Huge are having a great wee chat in there, talking about how physical the league is, how fast it is. Teams can't take their foot off the gas. Let's say Vic was saying his example about people wanting to defend and be safe was the big teams facing each other like City, Arsenal, Liverpool, the big teams of the moment. Yeah. And so Vic is agreeing with me. I knew we'd come full circle. I knew we would get there if we had a wee chat. 0-0 is boring unless you're the keeper's parents. That's a good one. 0-0 is boring unless you're the keeper's parents. I like that one, Vic. Definitely, that's a good one. But so I thought instead of looking at the draws, because score draws are fun, let's look at the 0-0 draws. Because really, when we say boring, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about 0-0 draws. And so far this season, we have had 17 0-0 draws, which is a lot. 17 0-0s is a lot of 0-0s when we're only on game week 22. Now, obviously, we've had 220 matches, so 17 out of 220 doesn't feel like that much, but 17 seems like a lot. The entirety of last season, there was only 16 0-0s. So we're already past the number of 0-0s that they had last season, and we still have quite a chunk of season to play. The year before that, so the 23-24 season, there was only 11 0-0s in the whole season. So I think when you take that into consideration, you're going, okay, 0-0s are boring, and we've already had more this season than the last 2 seasons, and we still have a chunk of the season to go. So that's when I started to think, okay, is there something in this? Is the quality of the league worse? Because why can't these teams score? Surely 0-0 shows an inability to score, and they're boring. So that's not good. That must mean that the quality of the league has reduced. You would think. The other side of that is exactly what Vic said earlier on, is, well, the lower teams, the teams that traditionally would, like if, say previously Liverpool was playing Burnley, you're expecting Liverpool to win 3 or 4-0. Easy. But that's not how it works anymore, because even the teams in the relegation zone aren't an easy win, aren't an easy draw. Do you know what? Aren't an easy win. Like Wolves, Arsenal only beat Wolves because of Wolves' 2 own goals. They really give United a run. They panicked Liverpool and they're starting to pick up points. And they are considered nearly one of the worst teams in Premier League history. But there they are, sticking it to the big teams. As I said, Liverpool-Burnley, I think, was a really, really good example. Flossie is saying, Sky Sports are reporting Man United to open talks with Manu. It's probably to upgrade his contract. I believe his wages are really low. Garnacho's was the same. A lot of the players that come through our youth setup are on really, really low wages, even when they become regulars in the first team. So I'll keep an eye on it, but I'm not uber shocked by that. I'd imagine that's something that's been on the cards for a wee while, especially with him having a bit of a tantrum there when we had Amram in the house. So I'd say they're just trying to placate him to stop him wanting to leave in the summer, particularly now that he looks like he's going to be getting some game time. I'm still a bit miffed with him. I didn't like his behaviour on social media. I didn't like the likes he was putting out there on different posts. I didn't like his brother's behaviour. I need to see more before we start putting money on the table, but I'm not at all surprised that we are trying to renegotiate his contract in an attempt to make him stay. And there will be a large number of Manchester United fans that are very happy about that and will say he deserves it. So I can't really I'm in the minority on that one. Vic is saying teams like Bournemouth now are also not selling players as quickly because of the TV money they're getting there, so they are more competitive and will park the bus to get a point. I do think there's something in that. Because of the TV money, the players are able to hold, or the teams are able to hold our players for longer. It's no longer big brother, little brother. It's much more of an even playing field, and they're able to, and I think that because they're able to keep their better players for longer instead of feeling forced to sell them for monetary reasons, it does mean then that those teams remain more, the teams that traditionally would have sort of fallen off, or there would have been the big gap between the top 6 and the middle table, it's not really there anymore. I feel like that gap has just completely disappeared, and we're going to have a look at that shortly as well, because I think it allows those teams to remain competitive because they're not losing all their best players. Like even if you look at say the likes of Germany, Do you know, where it's dominated by one team because that team just picks the best players from all the smaller clubs and builds like a super squad. And that went on for years and years and years and years. So I think that is kind of being eliminated in the Premier League, and I think that can only be a good thing. But I did think the number of 0-0 draws, 0-0 specifically, I thought was very interesting, rather than looking at draws as a whole. Now, I did want to show you something else, but I want to find the thing that I want to. I've been very smooth so far. I've been doing okay, but let's face it, oh yeah, this is what I wanted to share. This is what I wanted to share. And again, it's more of a curiosity rather than anything else. But these are the teams. I hope you can see them. Let me know if it's teeny tiny or if you can see them. So according to Opta, these are the teams that have had the most 0-0 draws so far in the Premier League this season. Behind the dugouts is the other side of the vote. He reckons, I think the state of football is on the decline, the quality of players is declining, the same with the managers. I would agree and disagree. I don't think the football is on the decline. I think the quality of players is actually probably some of the highest it's been. But look, maybe that's recency bias, but I certainly don't think it's worse. But I do agree, I think the quality of managers seems to be declining. So maybe the players aren't less talented, but what they're getting out of them is less. But it's an interesting conversation in and of itself. But yeah, it's good to have the other side of it as well, because obviously Vic is on fire in the chat tonight, and myself and Vic are reasonably aligned for the most part. So it's really good behind the dugouts that you're in the chat to give the other side of it, because I think it's important, you know, that everybody gets their say in their opinion. And the reason that I'm doing the show at all is because there's a conversation around it, because there's a debate around it, because there's so much disagreement around it. And I think when there's so much disagreement like that, I think it can be an interesting topic to explore. But just as I was talking about the 0-0 draws, Crystal Palace and Newcastle are joint top the most 0-0 draws in the Premier League so far this season. Crystal Palace and Newcastle have 4 each 0-0s. I was really surprised to see that. Really surprised to see that. And I'm keeping this because Ash will be on with me tomorrow, and I want to ask him what he reckons to this, because I was genuinely shocked. If you'd asked me to guess beforehand, I wasn't putting Newcastle in there. Definitely not. So I really got a shock when I saw this. Followed then, you've got Villa and Sunderland with 3 0-0s each, which again, I agree with Vic. Wouldn't have guessed it. Would not. If you had said, right, give me the top 5 teams that you think have had the most 0-0s out of those 17 0-0 matches so far this season, give me the top 5 teams that you think have had the most. I would not have put any of those 4 teams. None of them. I wouldn't have picked any of those teams. I would have put like Everton. I would have put like West Ham. I would have put like maybe Spurs, because they've not been good this season and their matches always feel a wee bit boring. Sorry, Kate. But I would not have been putting any of those 4 teams. And if you'd given me one of those teams to put in, I might have said Crystal Palace, because they've dropped off so drastically since the Glasner leaving sort of announcement. But I just thought it was really surprising. But what it does feed into, so if I go here and I go to the Premier League standings, okay? So if I look, the teams, where have I gone? We can get rid of that one. We can get rid of that one. The teams with the most 0-0 draws so far this season. So let's take Crystal Palace. Now, fair enough, Crystal Palace are down there in 13th. They're in the bottom half of the table. They're not doing really well, and they've dropped off massively. They're losing their best players. They're losing their manager. Things are not good at Crystal Palace. So you're like, right, okay, Crystal Palace, we can live with that. But then we go Newcastle. Newcastle United have had 4 0-0 draws this season, which obviously makes them absolutely dreadful, except for no, it doesn't, because they're in 8th. They're on joint points with 7th. They are, where are we here? They are 7 points off 4th. which is the same difference between first and second. So obviously they're not dreadful, are they? So 0-0s, shockingly, don't make a team dreadful. But let's continue, because we have to be fair. So let's look next in the list, Aston Villa. Aston Villa with technically the second most 0-0 draws in the Premier League so far this season, with 3. Okay? So if we look there then, Aston Villa, obviously also not dreadful because they're in third. So the team with the second most 0-0 draws in the Premier League so far this season is third. And they're on actual joint points with second, with Manchester City, the great Manchester City, one of the best squads, teams, managers in the whole wide world ever, with Erling Haaland the robot who's in striking. Will Aston Villa have the same points as them? So I'm not having it that Aston Villa are terrible. So let's go to the next one. Sunderland. Sunderland, who have been absolutely fantastic this season. In 9th, same as Newcastle, 33 points, 7 points off the top 4, same distance between first and second, have also not been terrible this season. So what I would just say is, while 0-0 draws on their own are quite boring. Yes, huge, Sunderland. While 0-0 draws are boring, while obviously draws maybe don't feel exciting in the moment, I don't think it's necessarily a clear indicator that teams are terrible, that the league is terrible, and that it's all just very boring. What I think it's, for me, an indicator of is that actually the teams are becoming more even. And when teams are more even, matches are more cagey, which again is what Vic was talking about earlier on. The matches are more cagey. Teams play more carefully. They play more defensively. It's more tactical. I'm one of those people. I jump in both feet first. I absolutely don't look before I leap whatsoever at all. I just jump right into it, and whatever happens, happens. But then you have those type of people who are probably a little bit more intelligent than my approach. They think things through, they plan ahead, they look at the different eventualities, and what they do then is they make an informed decision. Okay? But it feels like that's what's happening now with football. Instead of playing fast-paced, attacking, stylish, easy on the eye, enjoyable to watch, entertaining football, the managers and the tacticians and the coaches, they're really thinking things through. They're really making plans. They're looking at the computers, they're looking at the stats, they're boring us to death. But I don't think that's an indicator that the quality is worse. I think the entertainment value is arguably worse. When you've more 0-0 draws, I think you can just argue that the entertainment value has decreased somewhat. It's a personal opinion. It's my personal opinion. I'm less entertained the more 0-0 draws we're having, okay? I don't think it's a lack of quality though. I think it's a different type of quality. I think it's more like chess than... Do you know what I mean? You're thinking a few steps ahead. It's much more tactical. And we all love a bit of a maverick. We all love a bit of a rogue. We all love a bit of flair. Okay? I'm probably speaking out of turn saying we all, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I've yet to see anyone not feel that way, not enjoy the bit of the fun football. But to be able to play these tactical setups well and successfully and effectively, you have to have talent. Because if you don't have talent, you just can't do it. And you'd be leaking goals. So I think that's where it is for me. I don't think the Premier League, the quality has decreased. But it depends how you measure quality. So I'm saying I don't think the quality has decreased because I don't think the talent has decreased. But if I was judging it on entertainment, then yes, it's worse. So I think when we have this conversation about is the Premier League better or is the Premier League worse, it depends what you mean by better or worse. I think it's more competitive and I don't think we have any less talent. I do think that we have less entertainment. And I think that's what rubs people up the wrong way. I miss that. And Paige is in the chat saying football ain't what it used to be. When I grew up in the 90s, it was way more open and more attractive to watch. Now it's also system-based and oh dear if you make a mistake. Plus less and less characters in football, and that doesn't help. And I agree wholeheartedly with Paige, who has made the point I was trying to make much better than I was making it. Football isn't what it used to be. It used to be more open and attractive to watch. Now it's all system based and oh dear if you make a mistake. So entertainment value has dropped drastically, which I feel makes the league worse. But I don't think it makes it less competitive. I actually think it's more competitive than it's ever been. And I think when we talk about Vic's point earlier about the teams, the kind of lesser teams not having to sell their key players because they're not needing that money because of the TV revenue and different things, they're able to then retain their quality for a bit longer. They're able to remain more competitive with the bigger teams. And basically the bigger teams are having to work harder for the results. And so for me, that's what makes it competitive. Any team can take points off any team, and it's happening more and more consistently. This league is next to impossible to predict. It's likely Arsenal's going to win. But do you see when you go from second all the way down nearly to relegation, it's impossible to predict the finishing positions of these teams with any sort of certainty, and we are more than halfway through the season. To me, that means it's competitive. If you can't predict it, if you don't know what's going to happen, if you don't know who's going to win, if you don't know who's going to finish where, if you don't know who can take points off who, it's competitive. And I think sometimes we equate entertainment and competitiveness. It can be competitive and still be boring. And I think that's where we are. We've lost entertainment value, but I don't think it's less competitive. I actually think while we want the Premier League to be competitive, we need to find a different way for it to be competitive, one that allows it to be enjoyable to watch at the same time. So Huge, I saw, has a comment here. Huge has said the attacking quality has declined. And maybe that's the case. I'm not disagreeing. I am saying if I was arguing the other side, could you say it's not the case that the attacking quality has declined, it's a case that the defending quality has improved? That's the other side of the coin. I agree with you because I like flair players. I like, like the Jack Grealishes of this world. He's kind of like a modern version of that type of player that I enjoy. Flair, going forward, attacking. I enjoy that kind of football. And I think because of the system-based thing, which is what Paige referred to, I think we see less of that. But I also think the defenders, surely we have to give the defenders some kudos as well. Now, if I look specifically at my team, Manchester United, I would say the defending quality has declined because there is nothing and nobody who can tell me any of our modern day defenders are as good as or even close to Vidic and Rio. Nobody at all. Not even close. It's not a competition. It's literally just, I can't express how not close it is. So I hope you understand. But as a whole, do we think that the league has better defenders? Are the lower teams defending better? So we can say, okay, well, the traditional top teams, they're not scoring as much, therefore the striking quality has decreased. But on the other side of that, well, the lesser or mid teams, are they defending better, which is making the attacking harder? And I do think it's probably a little bit of both. Let me see. But this is such a good conversation. I didn't know if I was going to bore you to death with all the stats. You know, I'm not really normally a stat person. I'm normally a wing it type of person. Let's have a chat and see what happens. But I thought this was a really good conversation to have. And I thought when we looked into the details, it was very interesting. So I'm glad we're doing this because everybody actually seems to be interested, which is a win. That's good because I don't want to bore you when we're having a chat. Paige, Mama Flossie is saying 70s football was crazy compared to now. Flossie, I would absolutely believe that. There was no health and safety back in them days. Paige is saying it's harder to win the Premier League now, and Vic is saying defenders are much better now. Let me see. Huge is saying, I wouldn't say that because set piece defences isn't good right now. But is set piece attacking good right now? To be fair, Liverpool set pieces, not good. We covered that. Liverpool set pieces in the bin. But then you look at the likes of an Arsenal or a United who aren't doing particularly well at the minute, but who were at one point, only recently, top of the set piece goals, along with league leaders Arsenal. So I think, again, sometimes it can be both. I think it can be a bit of both. Let me see. Aaron, I saw a good point there. Aaron says, another reason is because the ball is in play less now. Taking time for long throws, taking time for free kicks. Agree. Absolutely agree, Aaron. See the amount of stopping and starting, the amount of time it takes us to, first of all, to award a set piece is, oh my God, it's 6 lifetimes. And then once it's been awarded, then they have to take the bloody thing and there's another 6 lifetimes. I think games are much more stop-start now, and I think part of that is actually, we'll go back to Flossie's comment about football being crazy in the 70s, but even like when I'm growing up in the 90s and the early noughties, the game was much more physical. There was there's so many more rules now. The rules are applied more vigorously now. And it just feels like a lot of matches are very stop-start. It's very hard to get into a rhythm. And then when it's stopping and starting, and you're kind of sometimes stopped longer than you've been in play. And I think that's a really, 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 really good point, Aaron. The ball is in play less. And because the ball's in play less and it's stop-start, it can feel disjointed, and if the players aren't really getting into the match, then we can't really get into the match with them. So I think that's another real problem, and they need to figure something out with that. Let me see. Huge is saying, the problem is being a good defender isn't enough anymore. You have to be good on the ball, a good passer, and then be a good defender. And you know what? I think that kind of highlights the thing of, we often don't have specialists anymore. We don't have a specialist goal scorer. Like Erling Haaland is fantastic, but he's also an anomaly in this day and age because he is just a specialist in scoring goals for the most part. And again, I kind of look to my own club here, so you can tell me if this is the case at your club. But we very much look at players who can, well, this is their main role, but they can also play this position and they can do that position if needed. And I think when we're playing more and then we're having more games, and we're having more injuries, and we're having more of everything, what's happening then is we need players to fill in positions that aren't our regular positions. So we don't have specialists. There's no more specialists. And I think then when we do get one, they really stand out. So yeah, you don't just have to be a good defender. You have to be a good passer, good on the ball, good at this, good at that. It was like, we got Onana because he was a ball-playing goalkeeper. All right, but he couldn't goal keep. He couldn't keep the goal. He couldn't stop the ball going into the back of the net, which was his primary function. So see if he can be a goalkeeper, I don't care what he can do with his feet. It's completely irrelevant, because unless he's going to play in midfield, I don't care what he can do with his feet. I want him to save the ball. Do you know what I mean? Unless he's sticking the gloves on his toes, I need him to save. Again, specialist position, I don't care if he's a ball-playing goalkeeper. I want him to save the football. So I think great comment from Huge. There's some really good comments coming in tonight. Love it. Yous are on fire, lads. Everybody. Rasta Stock's in the house. Hello, friend. Nice to see you. Cal is in the chat. God, lads, with everybody in the house. Let me see. Paige is saying Haaland is an old-fashioned striker. That he is, and you know what? I love it. I don't love Haaland, I don't love City, but I love someone who's just a specialist in their position. Feels like a bit of a throwback. Love it. One of the few that would hang back in the day. Agree. I think he could have played back in the day because he's a specialist. I miss specialists. We need more of it. What? Yeah, Paige, Butterfingers is right. But you know what? He was good with his feet. Cal is saying it's because the number of games and injuries, having a specialist is a luxury. Absolutely, Cal. That's exactly what we were just saying. Literally just as you joined, that's exactly what we were saying. Because of the number of games and the number of competitions, because we now have the Club World Cup and, you know, the expansion of the Champions League, which won't affect my team, but it'll affect other teams like Arsenal and City and stuff. There's more and more and more games. There's less and less and less rest. There's more and more injuries. And then they're flying halfway across the world. The scheduling is appalling. I mean appalling. I used to do schedules. That was... I was a manager for a long time in retail. I did people's schedules. Honest to God, that's an embarrassment. If I submitted the schedule that we have seen this season as a manager to my district manager, they would have been like, were you drunk when you wrote this? What are you doing? So I completely agree. The more that happens, the more injuries we have, the more we need players to fill in. Therefore, they can't be specialists because then they can't help out when we get stuck. So absolutely agree. 100% correct and right. Rob is in the house. Tardy Rob is in the house. But look, he's made it. He's here. He said hello, everybody. We don't have to panic. He's all in one piece. But, lads, the last thing I want to look at, because I am off to have my wee dinner after this, the last bit I want to look at is, and let me pull this up, there's a reason I have SofaScore open. It's not just so we can look at Arsenal at the top of the league and sick on my backside. But let me have a look. What was I doing? Yes. So what I wanted to look at, because we've mentioned a number of times, well, I have mentioned a number of times the top six. And I do this every time because I don't believe in the top six anymore. I don't think it exists. I think it's in the bin. I just don't think it exists anymore. And I don't think it has done for quite some time. I actually think it's basically all one now. Like when you can go from, 4th and 36, all the way down, 14th, 27, 15th, 27, there's 9 points between 4th and 15th. Like, lads, it's pretty close. So what I did was, I went back with my research hat on, and I looked at the gap between 5th, so currently a Champions League spot for England, if our teams continue to perform well on the European stage, everybody repping this week except Manchester City. Thanks, lads, but we really do need the extra 5th place. So if you could just keep it on going. Newcastle were flying the flag well yesterday. But I had a look at the gap between 5th, which is currently a Champions League spot, and 10th, which is literally the middle of the league. And I wanted to see how that had differed through the years. Has that gap gotten bigger? Has it gotten smaller? Is it much the same? Because to me, I actually think that gap is probably the biggest indicator on how competitive the league is. Because if there's a smaller and smaller and smaller gap here, between the middle and the top, then surely that shows the talent has actually it's diversified. The talent has spread out rather than being concentrated all the way up at the top. So, the gap currently between Manchester United in 5th, Flossie, 334 subs. That means we got a new sub while we're live, people. New sub alert. Look at us go. It's because we're such a friendly bunch. But currently between 5th and 10th there is 3 points, which is basically nothing. That is absolutely unbelievable. So I would suggest that means there is an even spread of talent. Obviously the league isn't over yet. This could change and it's likely to change, but 3 points is basically none. So what I did then was like, right, well, let's go back and see. Let's go back into the archives. So Newcastle finished 5th last year on 66 points, okay? And in 10th was Brentford on 56 points. So last year, between 5th and 10th, so Champions League spots and the middle of the league, was 10 points, okay? So it could end up in and around the same this season because things will differ slightly by the end. But 10 points again for 5 spots isn't particularly wild, really, when you think about it. So I thought, right, well, let's go back even further. because I was having fun at this point. I was in the rabbit hole. I was burrowing down. I was like Alice in Wonderland, searching for the white rabbit. And so I kept going. I was clicking all the years. So I went back another year. And Spurs, crazily, finished also on 66 points. So for 2 years in a row, 5th place. So last season and the season before, 5th place was 66 points. So that's what we're aiming for. And in 10th place, Crystal Palace with 49 points. So the gap there in the 23-24 season between 5th Champions League spot and the middle of the table was 17. So that's a much bigger gap. That's much, much, much more spread out. Much bigger gap. Now, and you can see there, even if you go up to 3rd, Liverpool in 3rd on 82, down to 10th and 49. So that's a much, much bigger jump the further. So let's go back another year. I'm only going to do 5 years. Don't worry, I'm not going to do all the years. 5th place the year before in the 22-23 season was Liverpool, 67 points. And in 10th place, Fulham had 52 points. So 15 points. So again, quite a big gap. Still pretty big. And then obviously above that, then you're going up to 70 odd points and all. So big gap there. And I think this is the last one we're looking at. This is number 5. So Arsenal were in 5th on 69 points. And Wolves were in 10th. Look at Wolves flying high that season in 51 points. So what was 69 and 51? So there was 18 points. So if we look at 21-22, 22-23, 23-24, it was 18 points, 15 points, 17 points, okay? Those are big gaps from 5th place to the middle of the Premier League. Last season, that gap closed drastically, 10 points. So far this season, we're on 3 points the difference. By the time we finish the season, we might finish up similar to last season at about 10 points, okay? That is a massive drop in the gap. It shows that all of the teams are actually closer together. I think it shows a spread of talent. And I think for me that shows that the league is more competitive because the teams are closer together. They're all closer, and the more congested it is, the closer they are, the more competitive I feel it is. Not entertaining. We've established it's not entertaining. Competitive. So, I don't think it's fair to say, no matter who the team is at the top of the league, whether it's Arsenal, whether it's Liverpool, whether it's City, whether it's hopefully Aston Villa, sorry lads, but I don't think it's fair to say, well, they've won because the league is competitive, because what I think is, when you say that, you're not actually insulting this team at the top here. Whoever it is, forget it's Arsenal. I don't like Arsenal either, sorry Vic, but it's not about this team. When you say the league's not competitive, who you're actually insulting is all of these teams. All of these teams that have worked their little tushies off, that have massively congested themselves, that are taking points off everyone left, right and centre. Even the likes of Wolves, Burnley, who are taking points off the big boys, Liverpool and the like. I think you're actually insulting all of these teams when you say the league's not competitive. The teams that are making it competitive are the ones you're insulting, not the team at the top. The team at the top, regardless of who it is to me, it's not relevant to the conversation, because when you say a league's not competitive, you're talking about the whole league. You're not just talking about this team. If you want to talk about entertainment, we need less nil-nils. We need to nip that in the bud. So they need to start scoring. I don't care if they draw, score draws. That's the rule. And I saw a thing on X and there was a suggestion. Can't remember who it was. But there was a suggestion that if there's a 0-0 draw, that both teams should receive 0 points. That if it's a score draw, they get the point each. But if it's a 0-0 draw, they should get 0 points. No points at all. And I thought, wouldn't that be an interesting concept? Because that would certainly open the games up. You get to about 65, 70 minutes and the kitchen sink is starting to get thrown. So I thought that was an interesting concept. But what do I know? And welcome Footy Corner TV in the house. Evening, nice to see you. What would you reckon to that, lads? Would you do that? Would you like to see, if there's a 0-0 draw, that both teams involved get 0 points. I would imagine Flossie is not going to be in favour of that, given the graphic I've shown earlier. But if we just ignore the fact, what do you reckon? I thought it was a fun idea. I thought it would definitely encourage the teams to try and score a bit more. It would be a bit of carnage, but I thought it would be fun. Guess is saying, I don't remember what league it was, but they had 1 point for a loss, 2 for a draw, and 3 for a win. No, I don't like that. No. Why would we give anyone points for losses? No. Whatever that league was, they're doing it wrong. Cal reckons it's a horrible idea. Punish in defence. And he wants people to open up. So he's not in favour of the 0-0 draw. But he feels that if you give 0 points, what you're actually doing is you're punishing the defence for doing their job and performing well. So that's fair. That's fair. I mean, it's less fun, but it's fair. And let's say Footy Corner TV has a different suggestion. Footy Corner says, keep the point system as it is, but add a bonus point for 3 goals or more. Also fun. I love it. I love this. Because if we think the quality's there, and if the league is becoming more competitive, which is what we wanted, but unfortunately a side effect is that it's becoming boring, we need to just add things to make it more exciting again. We don't want to remove the things that have happened that we were asking for. We want to add things to make it more fun again. So I like that. Guess is saying somebody's mum was judging that league. Lads, thank you so much for joining me. I can't believe we've actually been here for over an hour now at this point. So much fun. Really enjoyed the chat. I hope it was interesting for you guys. I hope even if you haven't changed your mind, maybe we've seen a different perspective on it. And maybe it's kind of opened us up to the conversation instead of instinctively trying to defend our team. But yeah, I thought it was good back and forth. I thought it was Footy Corner. Best one so far. Just turn the sprinklers on from time to time. That'll get them moving faster. Cal is telling me to keep spelling the T. Rob is saying cheers. Flossie's saying cheers. Smash a like. Oh, people, wait. Last thing. I need to end the poll. I keep forgetting to do that. So, the last very bit of the poll. Is this the most or least competitive Premier League season yet? 41% said most. 30% said least, 29% said neither. So we're entirely split, which is perfectly fine because how nice was it to be able to have that conversation, have all the different opinions, not agree on it whatsoever, but just have a chat. Just have a chat. So listen, go enjoy your evening, people. Myself and Ash will be back with you tomorrow, 7:30 tomorrow. Lou and Ash, chaos. Obviously, there's no plan whatsoever. I will see you all then. Have a good one.